all know me. You know what I do for a living. I'll go out and get this bird for you. He's a bad one. It's not like going down the pond chasing bluegills and tommycots. He's a fish that can swallow my whole. Little shaking, little tenderizing, and down you go. Gotta get this fella and get him quick. If you do, it'll bring a lot of tourist business just to see him. You've got your businesses back on a paying basis. Shark that size, no pleasure. I value my neck at a hell of a lot more than $3,000. I'll find him for $3, but I kill him for $10. Bastards costing you more than that every day. You want to stay alive and eat up to 10 or play it cheap. Be on welfare next winter. I'm gonna kill this thing. Just a matter of whether I do it now or at the end of summer. Sally sells seashells by the seashore soon. It used to be a popular tongue twister for kids back in 1974 when Peter Benchley had created the colorful characters of Quint, Hooper, and Chief Brody. And Mary Vaughn had a Sally sells seashells problem with which to contend, as moviegoers became aware in the summer of 1975 when the blockbuster film hit the movie theaters, Jaws. And although Quint appears to pitch a good offer to the elected leaders in Amity, a seaside town that relied primarily on summer tourist dollars, and a known local shark hunter who they could probably rely upon to make it all go away. Still, the town politely tells him that they will take the matter under advisement and let him go his way. A plot hole? Or did you have to read the book? You bet your life I made up my mind. And I'm telling everyone at this table that that's a shark. And I know what a shark is because I've seen one up close. And you better do something about this one because I don't intend to go through that hell again. And 3 years later, 1978, summer audiences found Chief Brody coming back with the same mayor and the same town council. But at least this time, they were able to attempt to impeach his argument with some psychology. After his past traumatic experience with sharks, scoffing up the affair with the rationale that he may be overreacting a little and blowing everything out of proportion. But returning again to the economic argument that Amity was a summer shore town, and that was simply how they made their money. Well, welcome to a town called Alexandria, a quaint suburb of the nation's capital, and where you find politics not only being a way to make a healthy living as a consultant or a politician, but also some locals for whom politics has become like their new religion. And in a courtroom, one might describe this problem as one involving prosecutorial discretion. The town chooses not to prosecute, even though they can, rather than pay old Quint the $10,000 to make it all go away. The same thing occurs when the shark returns and Chief Brody goes to the town council. Sometimes that shark looks right at you, right into your eyes. And the thing about a shark is he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't even seem to be living till he bites you. Those black eyes roll over and white, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. The ocean turns red, and despite all your pounding and your hollering, those sharks come in and rip you to pieces. Now imagine not a great white shark but a novel coronavirus that has been feeding on a town like Amity for over 3 years and taking bites out of almost 46,000 of the 150,000 residents. And a town council, mayor, and even a prosecutor, especially with the feeding frenzy and emergency declaration going away, just wanting to go back to life as usual without asking any questions, even about 232 suspicious deaths. And this is a matter now on appeal to the state Supreme Court. After a local Quint, myself, a former biological warfare planner, had a prosecutor refuse to investigate, and a court denying what is called a motion for summary judgment in court, or a decision that there is no genuine issue of fact that is debatable, so that the movement is entitled to legal relief. In this case, what is called a writ of mandamus, which simply compels a public official to perform something that is his or her duty to do, lacking any discretionary authority. They have no choice. But in this case, finding the prosecutor claiming a prosecutorial discretion to refuse to convene a grand jury investigation to do a little more digging to determine the actual cause of infections that have affected 1/3 the population of the entire town of Alexandria, Virginia, which may in some cases include lingering effects from long COVID, but also which affects some 23 million Americans, but also, as scientists have now determined, a higher risk of adverse outcomes upon reinfection. At noon on the 5th day, Lucky Ventura swung in low and he spotted us. Young pilot, not younger than Mr. Hooper here. Anyway, he spotted us. A few hours later, a big old fat PBY come down and started to pick us up. You know, at the time I was most frightened, waiting for my turn. Old Quint, the seasoned shark hunter, says he was most afraid while sitting in the water waiting for his turn to get aboard a big fat PBY. And pandemics, at least according to the Data Institute at the University of San Francisco, are at times historically associated with fear, confusion, and despair, or helplessness. And according to Pew Research Center, at the beginning of the pandemic, even some hardcore atheists for the first time in their lives had even considered prayer as an answer for solving the pandemic, while especially for the elderly and persons of color, having borne the brunt of the attack, once the vaccines had become available, were found simply waiting for their turn, just like Quint, hoping that they would make it out of the water alive, with a lifeline provided for by a few select pharmaceutical companies promoting a newly developed messenger RNA technology that required a massive investment and returned in revenue, a boon in annual revenue stream. And those were not the only businesses that found a profit in pandemic. I'll never put on a life jacket again. So, 1,100 men went into the water, and 316 come out, discharged to the wrist. June the 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb. Quint was on a top secret mission aboard the Indianapolis, so secret that they could not even send out a distress signal, and unlike the recent tragedy involving the Titan submersible, the sailors weren't even listed as overdue for over a week, leaving them to the mercy of the sharks, a situation that finds some parallels to the Amity tale playing out in Virginia courts today, involving what the federal courts in D.C. have identified as a federal government whistleblower. Case now before the Supreme Court, Webb v. Department of the Army, and also before the Merit Systems Protections Board, Webb v. DOD, a matter brought back in 2018, 2 years before the pandemic, simply to trigger the required whistleblower investigation involving a suspicious job offer. And chances are that, like the story regarding the beginning of the Spanish flu pandemic, it got its name only because only the press in the neutral nation of Spain during World War I would publish anything at all about the matter. Didn't see the first shark for about half hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know how you tell a shark in the water, Chief? You can tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. Quint was pretty knowledgeable about sharks, which he could tell immediately in the water by looking from the dorsal fin to the tail. And at least according to veteran epidemiologist Bruce Aylward, after conducting a robust investigation of the outbreak in China, getting the virus is a function of coming into contact with the virus. It's like you cannot catch cooties in a game of cootie shots if the other person is not it. And in pandemics, somebody has to have the virus before you can get it. And in China, looking at 19 times more cases in February 2020 than had yet been reported in the entire United States by mid-March 2020, they had determined that your chances of catching COVID-19 at that time were less than 5%, or about your chances of getting an acceptance letter to Harvard University, if you had even applied. But by the end of December 2020, in the little town of Alexandria, there had been 7,231 of those letters of acceptance, including some reinfections, that had resulted in 430 hospitalizations and 87 graduating to a cemetery, summa cum laude. And to a reasonable trier of fact, that simply would shock the conscience as clearly erroneous, leaving a firm conviction that a mistake had been made. You know, by the end of the first dawn, lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks there were, maybe 1,000. I do know how many men, average 6 an hour. Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson from Cleveland, baseball player, Boston to me. I thought he was asleep. Reached over to wake him up. He bobbed up, down in the water, like a kind of a top, upended. He'd be bitten in half, below the waist. Rebutting either a claim of prosecutorial discretion or an assertion of sovereign immunity, which courts often remind plaintiffs is alive and well in Virginia, this defense can be overcome by a showing of some evidence of discriminatory effect and discriminatory intent, such as where the selection was deliberately based upon an unjustifiable standard, such as race, religion, or other arbitrary classification, or where the matter simply shocks the conscience. And at least after his re-election, Commonwealth Attorney Brian Porter, running unopposed, was convinced that he must be doing something right, probably just like the elected officials in Amity. And that simply shocks the conscience. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.